What's up everybody? So today we're going to compare my new car to my previous car. So this one is a 2016 370Z NISMO with the tech package, and then this one is the 2012 370Z touring model with the sport and the tech package. So to start off with the obvious, the body kits are much different. The 2016 NISMO, they took a lot of the inspiration from the GTR, so it has a really aggressive look, just a really cool look overall. This one, of course, you can tell what it looks like. And then as we come up to the wheels, obviously we have different wheels, red brake calipers, and then the sport wheels with gray calipers. Side skirts are also different, a little bit wider, and of course the two-tone. And then we also get little fender flares on the NISMO. Then as we make our way to the rear, sport model gets the little spoiler, and then the NISMO has just a little bit bigger version of it. And then the rear end on the NISMO is a little bit wider with a vent, some different colors in it, while the standard Z is just more rounded off. So obviously the exteriors are pretty different, but now we'll hop on inside, check out some of the interior differences. So one of the main differences is the Recaro bucket seats. Huge upgrade for this generation of the NISMO. Black leather, red Alcantara, red stitching. They are manual controls. And then with the touring model, this is the standard seat design. Touring model does give it the leather and micro suede. They're also heated and power adjusting. But the main difference with the seats are the bolstering. They're a lot smaller in this car, much less aggressive, easier to get in and out of. But as far as a performance seat goes, they don't really hold you in as good, of course, as a bucket seat's going to. And one thing I noticed actually with this seat, I feel like my legs are a little bit too long. They seem to stop touching my leg there, and then we have that much space between my joint and where the seat actually stops touching. So I kind of feel like I'm sitting on top of the seat rather than sitting in the seat. And then back in the NISMO, you can see how this base is a lot longer, and now my joint is basically right in front of it. So now we have about that much space versus that much. So with the driver's seat of the NISMO, you really feel like you're sitting in the seat. The seat is really hugging you and you're down into it. So now checking out the entire interior, the 2016 NISMO will have a black chrome gunmetal trim on all the nav buttons, around the shifter. And then in the normal one, we have silver trim. And then comparing the steering wheels, this is a perfectly round steering wheel. We have Alcantara on the left and right side, black leather, all red stitching, and then the red stripe up top. And in the normal Z, the steering wheel isn't actually quite round. There's a little notch right in it. Gives it a really neat feel. I do wish they kept that for the NISMO. We do get perforated leather, white stitching, and then solid leather on the top and bottom. So that's about it for the interior differences. So basically you get the gunmetal trim, black Alcantara, red Alcantara, all red stitching throughout, and a little bit more red accents. And then in this one, it's all the black micro suede, black leather, and white stitching everywhere, and then the black leather down there. So to check out the real differences between the two cars, what better way than to actually drive them, because that's what you're actually paying for. You're paying for a different driving experience. So I took the red one around the block just to get my bearings with that once again. So back in the NISMO, the first thing that I noticed is the obvious, the seats. They're bucket seats. Obviously, I've said that a million times. But like I said, with the base, they go up a lot farther up my leg than before. So when I'm sitting in these seats, I feel much more like I'm cradled in the car, and I actually find them a lot more comfortable. And then the whole backs being much larger with bolstering. The whole seat, you're really just sitting into the car rather than sitting on top of the seat. So that makes a really, really big difference, much bigger than I would expect. And with that, we'll also talk about the suspension, which is drastically improved. So taking a very fast turn, zero body roll. I was stuck in the seat the entire time, and it drives so much different than I was ever expecting. Now, I've driven the Ferrari 458 and the highly modified GTR, and with those cars, you get a very interesting sense of body control and just a very rigid platform. You can tell that the front end of the vehicle and the rear end are bolted together, the ceiling to the floor, the left to the right. Everything about a supercar is, there's no flex in the body whatsoever. It's just very, very rigid. And the first thing I noticed with this car is it's just like that. The rigidity of this car is unreal for a car in this price range. And you do feel every single bump in the road, going over the different contours, the car goes over them. It doesn't just float over bumps and absorb all the bumps. And when you take any type of sharp turn, there's absolutely no body roll whatsoever. Slamming on the brakes, the car doesn't dive down at all, and when you punch the gas, it doesn't squat either. So suspension is a very, very big difference in the two cars. Moving on to some other things, the steering wheel is a little bit heavier in the NISMO. Just in the parking lot, you're gonna notice that. The normal car, you can easily just turn the wheel around and make a 3-point turn, while this one, you do have to muscle it just a little bit more. The clutch is also a little bit stiffer in this car. It does seem a little bit smoother to shift. For those of you who own these cars, you do know that the clutches are a little bit tricky to get used to. This one's just slightly better. The brakes, now this might be just because it's less mileage on the car, but they are a little bit more touchy. In the other car, I could push the brake pedal down about an inch. I could make it level with the gas pedal, and then it would really start to bite. With this one, as soon as I touch it, it's slowing down, and by the time the brake pedal gets in line with the gas pedal, it's really slamming on the brakes. So that's another pretty big difference in the car. So power. A lot of people, they hear the NISMO and they think, why would you spend all that extra money for 18 more horsepower? That seems like a waste of money. Well, horsepower is not everything in a car, and honestly, the people who don't really know much about cars, that's the first thing they talk about is it doesn't have that much more horsepower, what a ripoff. So yeah, 18 more horsepower, not that much, and the car does weigh a little bit more, so it technically is slower to 60. From what I've read, it's like a 5 seconds 0 to 60 versus 4.7 in my other car. But honestly, I think this car is faster because the engine feels a lot smoother, the power delivery is more linear, and it just seems to have more throttle response, and just there's a little bit more power in the engine that I can feel. Of course, I'll test it out with the Lotus Evora, seeing how it does compared to that. I know that the Red Z was neck and neck, so we'll see how well this one does. So now getting up to some speed, we'll get to second gear. So 25 miles an hour, second gear. And that was a little more than 60. So it's not slow at all. You're never gonna get in a 370 and think it's slow. I know, some people just really get on that idea that it's a few tenths of a second slower than the previous Zs. So that's really not something you should care about. It is plenty quick, and overall it does feel like a complete step up between the other car. So now to answer 3 questions that are probably gonna come up. Was this car worth the upgrade for me? Is it worth the price point difference? And what if you don't have this car? What if you're looking for a Z and this one is out of your price range? Or what if you have a touring model like my other car, or a base model? So starting with the first one, was it worth it for me? Absolutely. I did not expect to like this car as much as I did. Like I said in previous videos, I was just gonna make a video on it because it is a cool car. But once I drove it, it blew my mind because it reminded me so much of the Ferrari 458 and the GTR. It handles like those cars. The way it feels, the whole suspension rigidity about it, it's so tied together. There's extra bracing in it. It's a stiffer suspension. It feels like a true sports car and almost a supercar in the terms of handling. So for me, based on the handling, it was well worth it. I love the improvements. And then kind of another weird factor about the car, I find it a lot more comfortable than the previous one. The bucket seats, like I said, I just fit in them a lot better. They seem to hold me better. I've done a few highway road trips and it's a lot more comfortable. I don't get out with a sore back or anything. But for me, since it reminded me of the GTR and the Ferrari, and yet I could afford this car, it was well worth it, and I haven't looked back. Even just taking the Red Z around the block, I like this one so much better because it is a better car overall. So now, is this car worth the actual price point? Brand new, I don't think so, because it's about $10,000 more expensive than the next step down. That's a lot of money for what you're getting. Now, used market, I think it is well worth it. Looking at 2016 model years with the Sport and Tech package, they're about $5,000 cheaper than what this one's going for used. Now, you can't actually get a touring model with the Sport and Tech package anymore, which is kind of stupid, so I couldn't actually get a 2016 model year like my previous car. But for $5,000 more, I think that is very well worth it. You're looking about $30,000 for the fully loaded car with about the same mileage as this, and then this one, mid-30s is what you're gonna be looking for. So I think that's well worth $5,000 because the body kit alone looks like a mini GTR. The interior is tied together very nicely with the Alcantara and the really cool looking bucket seats, and the extra suspension modifications it has, the brakes, everything that's different about this car, that's a pretty good deal for $5,000. Now to move on to the last question, I've seen a lot of comments about this one. What if you don't have this car? You're looking for a 370, but this one's out of the budget, or you already have one, a base model or a touring model or something, and you're not looking to trade in for this one. So there is good news. There's a few things you can do that will completely transform your car. First thing I think you should do to your car, get a set of bucket seats. Normally, I would always say an intake and exhaust is the first mod to do. That's not going to transform the car. Getting yourself a bucket seat, every time you hop in the car, you're going to feel like you're in a race car. Every time I get in this car, it's only been a month, but every time I'm in this, I feel like I'm in something so special because I'm sitting in a bucket seat. There's bolsters, there's cool materials, and the comfort aspects are just so much better than the stock seats. And one thing kind of weird about that, with the bucket seats, there's actually better visibility. I can actually look out of that side window on the right side. But a bucket seat's gonna make the interior feel really good. You'll probably be a lot more comfortable in it. And of course, around the racetrack and different mountain roads, you're gonna be more secured in the car, having the nice bolstering. And there are many different seats that you can look for that aren't really that expensive. You can go for a Sparco and a Recaro seat with nice materials that are in like the $300 to $400 range. And there's even some off brands that offer really nice materials that are a pretty good price. So it's not really gonna break the bank to get yourself a driver's seat that's a nice bucket seat, but it will completely transform the car. And then next up, as we take a very quick turn, wow, suspension. I would highly recommend doing a set of coilovers and some type of chassis bracing. That turn was going about 60 miles an hour around it, and it was as flat as a pancake around the entire turn. The suspension is such a big upgrade in this car, and if you do a set of coilovers, you'll really be able to dial it in to get a comfortable ride, but it'll still be a very performance-oriented ride. It's weird how this car is more abrupt than the normal car. It's stiffer, you feel the bumps, and it's not a comfortable soft ride. But at the same time, I find this car a lot more comfortable for some reason. It doesn't make sense to say that, but it's more comfortable in every way, even though it's an abrupt and stiff ride. But a set of coilovers, you'll dial it in really nicely. But some type of chassis bracing to eliminate some body roll and really just tie in the structure of the vehicle is gonna be a big difference for you. It's weird when you do drive a supercar, which I'm sure some of you have driven some higher end cars, but when you drive those cars, it's hard to explain just how rigid they feel, because you can just tell that the whole car is just tied together with zero body roll and zero flex in the whole body. So suspension upgrades will do so much for your Z. It'll really turn it into a completely different car. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know a lot of people were wanting to know the differences between the two. Overall, the 370 is a really good platform. You can't go wrong. There's probably one in your budget ranging from $15,000 to $40,000 depending on what you're looking at. And I can honestly tell you, you are not going to be disappointed with any of the 370s that you pick out. They are a fantastic platform. They've been around for a pretty long time without any too drastic changes. There's many different trim levels and years that you can pick out that have different things to offer. But as far as the 370 does go, this is the best one they've ever made. And Nissan went out with a bang on this car, and it is fantastic. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more content and give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next video.